What is social practice?
I mean, I think the funny thing, participating in that conference, no one would, at least that year, no one would apply that label to themselves. They would say, what is social practice? And everyone would say, well, we can't define it. It's happening right now. We can't define it, et cetera. But I mean, in terms of just sort of like a dry academic version of it, like if I were talking about it with my students and trying to sort of give them a context for the practice, it seems to me that its mission is less about capital-driven aspects of the art world, less about material production, and that the sort of medium itself is the fabric of social exchange, or individuals coming together to participate in something. It can be collaborative or it can be really individual. And I think that people, I'm asked often when people first hear about it, how is this different than performance art? And I think they're both radically different. I think certainly performance can have elements of relational aesthetics or social practice and vice versa, but I think they are pretty distinct disciplines in terms of sort of both the methods, but also the end goal of particular things. And I don't want to give any type of blanket definition or presuppose what someone's ends are in a social practice type of project, but it does seem to me often that there's sort of an aspect of trying to create some kind of progress or make something better. And I know that's not true for everybody, but for a lot of projects that I've encountered, there is sort of this social spirit in it, whereas a lot of performance work is inherently antagonistic or difficult to deal with. I think we were asked during the Q&A at the end of the session, and my collaborator Michael gave one of my favorite answers that I've ever heard to a question at a panel, where he was asked, sort of challenged, well, you're both sort of being a bit antagonistic, and we're curious though, don't most artists, isn't their aim to make the world a better place? And Michael responded, oh, no, I only aim to confound. And I thought that was a really beautiful sort of like moved us like over here, these weird performance guys, and maybe we don't fit into this, even though a lot of our work probably has relational aspects. But I think that's any work that has time as an element. It seems like there's a lot of that kind of fabric of social exchange going on, almost just by default. Yeah, exactly what it is, I don't consider myself a practitioner of it, so it's I wouldn't want to define it for anybody else, just like I would feel weird about somebody trying to define maybe the type of work that I make or something. I don't want to do a disservice because I'm not engaged enough with it regularly, but I do pay attention to it quite a bit. I have a lot of colleagues and friends that work in it, and I recognize it as a really valuable and interesting progressive movement. I'm always just kind of the voice that wants to, well, let's talk about what could be better. Let's talk about the aspects that kind of seem highly problematic and antithetical to actually what seems to be the core mission of it.
So let's talk about that. What would you identify as aspects that are problematic and antithetical to a core mission?
Presupposing that, there is this core mission of creating some kind of social dynamic that progresses us towards a better tomorrow or what have you. The issue that I've seen in a lot of the projects is sort of an unintentional post-colonial kind of mentality where it reminds me very much of the critiques that we hear of a plot to a film like Dangerous Minds or something like that, where these sort of the white person comes into this environment and knows better than the natives or whatever you want to call them, and shows them this new way to do something or helps them form these bonds that they can't do on their own. And I don't think that the artists whose work I've been critical of are actively trying to do that or that's on their mind, but I think it's inherent in anything where you bring something to any group of people, whether they're of the same race, gender, sexual orientation, what have you, with any kind of presupposition that you have something to teach them or to offer them, or that you can teach them to value something a little bit more. I kind of regularly tell people that the reason I don't want to participate in a project where I'm invited to, have a beer with somebody and talk about it is because I don't need to be, nobody needs to remind me that that act of leisure, that's a privilege that I have. I recognize that and value it already. I don't need it to be formalized and turned into this kind of like charade or this sort of performance where we're interacting for the sake of pointing out that people don't have real interaction. This is where some of this stuff is problematized for me, as well as a lot of the kind of just the places that people choose to do the projects. Particularly where I live, there's a lot of younger white artists who come from a place of privilege, sort of trying to make this work that talks about the gentrification of a particular area or something like that, when they themselves are the gentrifiers who've moved in, who are the sort of segue between the community that exists in this space of abjection and then the condo developers. And in between are the young artists, and they're sort of the first step, the catalyst in this thing kind of moving along. And so that's kind of, all art is inherently paradoxical and has problems, but it has been in recent years kind of the lack of willingness to engage those or meet them head on, or even discuss that this is seriously going on and this might be an issue in this type of work. That's sort of caused me to be, I guess, one of the more critical voices around it, at least in, regionally where I am.